am just thrilled to see all of you here because I know what a challenge it was for everybody to pay and then get vetted into Fort Hunter Liggett before you came. So I applaud all of you for your effort, and this is great that we're here. So as Paul said, I'm Karen Jernigan from King City. I'm the membership chairperson for the San Antonio Valley Historical Association. And I'm delighted to be here tonight for this event in the historic Hacienda at Fort Hunter Liggett. I'm equally delighted and honored to be able to introduce our guest speaker, Michael J. Semas of Hanford. My husband and I first met Mr. Semas a few years ago at a 3-hour meeting in a coffee shop in Hanford. We had asked to meet him because we had become familiar with photos he had on the internet of historic sites in the Central Valley, including some great postcards of King City. We were eager to learn more about his collection of images, and Mr. Semas was generous in sharing with us some of his techniques for trying to engage people in the appreciation of old postcards and how they tell the story of California's amazing past. Since then, we have followed his Facebook page, Antique Images from the collection of Michael J. Semas, along with more than 21,000 followers who also appreciate history. Mr. Semas was born and raised in Hanford, and he is an accountant by trade. Please join me tonight in welcoming him to our event and get ready to learn more about Southern Monterey County in historic postcards.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm wondering who the person was you were talking about. My name is Michael Semas, and I'm a certified public accountant by trade. When I started college, I went to College of Sequoias in Visalia, and my first major declaration was for history. I was going to be a history teacher. And I went to go speak to the history teacher who was in charge of the history department at College of Sequoias. His name was Nathaniel Martin. And I told him about my passion for history. And he gave me some of the best advice that anybody could ever give me. He said, Michael, I love your passion for history, but if you become a history teacher, you're going to starve. He says, what you need to do is pick a career in which you can make good money at and make history a hobby, and you'll learn more and have more fun with it at the time. And he was right. And so over the years, I've been collecting antique imagery. And when I talk about antique imagery, I'm mainly interested in everything between the Civil War in 1940, and mainly professional photographers, postcards, and the like. And I've amassed north of about 25,000 images over the years. I have several fireproof safes at my house where I keep all the valuable stuff. So I worry more about fire than anything else. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a show on Southern Monterey County and some of the things that I learned when I was researching for this show. So first off, what I'm going to do is just kind of show you an image as to what's going on, what I do. This is not Southern Monterey County, but images tell a story. And so what we see here is we see this woman. If I'm in your way, first of all, if you can't hear me, please let me know. And if I'm in your way, tell me to move. Okay, so this is an image of a woman standing on a trestle watching for logs to come down the hill. It's a nice image, but when you take a look at where she's at, you realize that she's insane. Yes, that's her right there. There's no safety rope, nothing else. That's a long, long fall, and she's in a skirt, no less. Now, she had to be very hungry to be doing that for a job. So this is what I like, is to be able to find images like this. This is another image that I have. This was taken 1904 at the top of Tejon Pass. That's what it looked like. So I went down with my camera and I stood on the bridge on top of Tone Pass and took the photo from the same spot today, and there it is. So if you want to go back and take a look at that again, you see the mountains, how they line up. The mountains line up, pretty much standing in the same spot. Yeah, it just goes to show you how much has changed in 100 years. And then, of course, there's photos like this. You know, I bought this because I thought it was an interesting work photograph, but then when I got home and started looking at it, I realized this guy seemed out of place. Everybody else is all standing around with shovels and everything like this, and he just looks out of place. And I zoomed in on him, and I looked at him, and I realized, aha, today is payday. He's handing out the paychecks to everybody working there. And he does not look like he should belong there, does he? And of course, sometimes I find pictures where, you know, the bear is looking where to go to the bathroom. I don't know. And so the thing is that this is just part of what I do in terms of finding antique imagery. Tonight, of course, my phone would have to ring while I'm sitting here talking. Sorry, I just shut it off. Tonight, what I've done is I've done something a little bit different than what I've ever done before with slideshows. In the past, I just show photos and talk about them. I thought I should get into more depth as to what's going on with the photos. So I'm providing with you the source of information that I'm using. All the photos that you're going to see are from my personal collection. But there's also going to be some postmarks, and that comes from a 2-volume book done by Williams of California Town Postmarks, 1849-1935. Yes, it's a 2-volume edition. It's very boring unless you like postmarks, and I think it's amazing. There's also another book that I have, Post Office Information. It's from SAVHA, History of California Post Offices, 1849-1876. There's only 500 of those books made. I have 2, one for backup. Newspaper articles from online sources. Maps come from online sources, including the county map, USGS maps, and Sanborn fire maps. I had asked this map to be shown tonight because this is an 1898 map of Monterey County, and I actually found the map online as well. We're going to be talking about everything that's below this line. We're not going to pay attention to anything that's going on up here. We're talking about the wilderness of southern Monterey County, and man, is it ever. So we're going to go start off with Chualar, we're going to go to Gonzales, we're going to go to Metz, we're going to go to King City, we'll come down here into Santa Lucia, we're going to do a little bit of Bradley, and off over here to Holone. So first off, we'll start with Chualar. Chualar was established in 1871 as a post office, and the Spanish name for chul, which is pigweed. It's a weed that grew wild in the area. And so the post office existed, it's still there today. First article I could find in the newspapers was done in March 1867 in the National Republic of Washington, D.C. Talks about land becoming available for private ownership. And it talks about Rancho Chualar, containing 12,906 acres. And you can contact Mariano Marlin, the executive of the estate, who owned that rancho at the time. This is an interior blacksmith shop at Chualar. This was a postcard that I bought, and it sat in the owner's inventory for about 4 years. Every time I'd see him at a postcard show, I'd flip through and I'd see it still sitting there because he had an exorbitantly high price on it. And after the 4th year, I said, look, I'm the only one that comes to the show that knows where Chualar is. Can you sell it to me for a better price? And so he cut the price in half and I bought it. I still paid $100. Okay. Never seen it again. Okay. It's a great photo. Shows all the workings of the Chualar blacksmith shop. Now, a blacksmith shop was just as important as any other business in the town. A town that did not have a blacksmith did not exist. He was the man that made everything work. This is also the Beck and Anderson store in Chualar, California. And I guess that's Beck and Anderson out there standing out front. And here's another store. This was the A.J. Invelson. I think I'm saying that right. And what made this card really interesting was the fact that in the back, it was sent to Sweden. And the writing is in Swedish. Now, I don't read Swedish, so I posted this up on my Facebook page. And I got an email back from somebody that said, "Greetings from Invalson in Chular. This is this new store which we built on the corner. He is also the post office. Frank Johnson is the bookkeeper. There's a lot of money here. Greeting to you from all of us, your sister Anna." So it was a great bit of information. It was a relative of the owner of that store that sent it back to Sweden. And you just don't know where you're going to find this stuff. Another thing that's interesting here was back in 1916, there was a huge storm that went through Chular. And here's an article that says, at Chular, the church steeple looked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, apparently undecided as to whether it will stand or fall. And it goes into talking about how the town was pretty much destroyed by a windstorm. And that answers this question: what was this about? After the storm at Chular, 1916. Yeah, it looked pretty bad. So it's nice to see the newspaper article to kind of give you a little bit more information about that. Moving down the rail line, we go to Gonzales. Gonzales was established in 1873. It was named for Teodoro de Gonzales and active in Spanish California politics. And so another important item for any town to exist was to have a railroad depot. A railroad depot meant that the train would stop, people would get off, commerce would happen. And so this is a picture of the Gonzales Railroad Depot. And then across the depot was the town. This is a rather poorly conditioned postcard. I was happy to buy it because I had never seen it again. And if you want to kind of see about how Gonzales looks today, here's the same view today. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And of course, you come over here and you see the Weidman block in this nice store. And Gonzales gets a boom. The Alpine Evaporated Cream Company is now a force of several men excavating for a big factory in Gonzales. And then further on in 1908, the construction of the plant at the Alpine Evaporated Cream Company is rapidly approaching completion, and they spent between $60,000 and $70,000 of 1908 dollars. So it was several $1 million they spent. And what that does, gave you a little background as to what this place was. And this place is operating at high capacity with all the air quality control board issues that need to be resolved at the time. And what I learned was that the Alpine Evaporated Cream Company had a government contract to sell powdered milk to the military. And so they took advantage of all the dairies that were around here and were able to build that up. Here is a picture of the Gonzales band standing out in front of the buildings. Every town had a little band, and I was real happy to find this one. I'm sure King City had one, but I haven't found one yet of the band. This is another view of Alta Street, Gonzales, showing the buildings that were there. And if we take a look at it today, there's another view of it, and there's a view of it today. So, you know, what you have here is a lot of trees and a lot of greenery have been brought in to make the town much more inviting to look. And all these pictures are the now pictures. I didn't drive over there to take the pictures. It all came off of Google Maps. In 1915, there was a severe wreck at Gonzales below Salinas, talking about a horrible train accident. And talks about who was killed, who was injured, and none of the passengers were injured. And what it does is it also talks about how SP Express ditched for her train tracks, and talks about who the injured were. And so what it does is helps me answer what was going on here. Train wreck at Gonzales, April 10, 1915. And you can't imagine the force that was going on to make this train look like this. Because this was the Express. It was called the Lark. And the Lark ran an express between San Francisco and Los Angeles along the coastline. And it had to be doing between 70 and 80 miles an hour when this happened. And fortunately, ultimately, one of the engineers died, but everybody else survived this crash. And of course, you can buy pictures of the Gonzales train wreck at the Sale Hedgehog drugstore. So that's probably what I got there was one of those postcards. So yeah, you can buy pictures of the wreck. Soledad. Soledad was established in 1869. It's the name of an Indian. It's an Indian name for solitude, which says a lot about the place. And it was named by Portolo. What we've got here is, you see this is a USGS map showing where Soledad is. and the rail line that comes along, and then the Salinas River that comes along here as well. This is a Sanborn fire map that shows Soledad. Here's the train depot, the grain warehouse, and then this is Main Street right here showing the different buildings that existed at the time. Another view up further of Main showing the school, and then another view down south of Main showing more of the town that was existed. Here is the bridge that crossed there at Soledad. Nice, safe looking bridge. Of course it says $10 to $100 fine for driving over this bridge at faster than a walk, or driving over 40 head of stock at one time. It says here, River Bridge, Soledad. This is taken by the photographer of Horn. Horn was from King City. I used the names of photographers to help me identify photographs that only have their name on it because they only worked in certain areas when they were taking pictures. This is the Warlock, am I saying that right? Warlock Corner in Soledad. Nice looking little building. Here's what's there today, Bank of America. And then we have here Froley's Hotel. This was a postcard that was done by a photographer by the name of Meadow. He had an unusual writing matter. He was from Watsonville. And fortunately, Froley's is still there today. It's painted, it looks very nice. Down the street further, we have the Soledad Drugstore, and at front in Soledad, in downtown Soledad, today, we have these stores. And I use those fire maps as a way to be able to identify the then and now, because the fire maps identify the businesses that were there, and then I'm able to use those old photos to match it to the fire map, and then look for it today on Google Earth to see what's there now. This is a general stable there in Soledad, and sometimes when you get a picture, it's bright, and you can't really see what's going on. And so what I do is I reverse the polarity and make it a negative, and then I can read Central Stable, Tom B. Pettit, proprietor. It says fine turnouts, lumberyard, other words that are on here. If I took the time to. But see, that's how you're able to also identify what's on the pictures there. So you can see they're going back, and it helps you identify stuff that's on there. Here's a bird's eye view of Soledad, and I'll carry on. As you can see, it's very, very sparse. Solitude is pretty much what it is. This is where the Soledad prison is now, is right there. So, Soledad had a nice little grammar school, and they also built a nice little public school in 1908. A nice little, what this is called is California Mission Design. And they even went in further to build even a nicer school, and that's what's there today. Really modern. So. And then there's the Borden Dairy Delivery in Soledad. I guess dairies were still pretty big around here at the time. We're going to go to Metz. Never heard of Metz before I found a postcard of Metz. And Metz was named for Metz. William Metz, he was a settler in 1871 and a stock raiser. And so, why am I talking about Metz? Well, there was a washout by a storm in 1911 where the rail line along a long trestle was washed out. And so, what was happening was traffic was being diverted through the Central Valley to be able to maintain the shipping of product and passengers. And this is the picture. So it says here. So this was a well-defined, it says here, washout, Southern Pacific Railroad near Metz, Harlan, the photographer, he was from King City, and the date. So it allowed me easy access to figure out where that was in the newspapers. That's what it looks like today. So they really changed it quite a bit. They brought the rail line further from the river, but there's nothing there. So, and we go to San Lucas. San Lucas is down south of King City. It was established in 1887. It stems from the San Lucas Rancho, an 1842 land grant. And so here is an article from the 1886 San Luis Obispo Tribune talking about San Lucas is a much more pretentious place. It now numbers some 40 or 50 houses, is more erected as fast as lumber can be procured, and carpenters can put it together. All classes of businesses are represented, even to photography gallery, which I'd really like to know who he was. A land and loan office and a Chinese laundry. Okay, so it's just interesting. And then we have here the bridge at San Lucas. And when I drove down Highway 198, I actually went to go look for this bridge. And this is what it looks like, yeah. It's not the same bridge. I really studied it today, but it's close. And it is pretty rickety. I was going over the top and it was kind of like, oh. Anyway, but that's the bridge today. And then, of course, we have here Harlan, likes to hide his name in the photos somewhere, Harlan in the eaves. But this is the bad past church. Bad past church in San Lucas, California. And, you know, they couldn't erase that, so. What they would do is they would write, what would happen is, you would have to write on the negative, and you'd have to write in reverse. Because that's how it would, because the way the negative is made, in order for you to put the wording on it, you had to write on the side that the emulsion was, and you had to write backwards. So that's why you see these types of errors. Halon. Now, I'm saying Halon like I know what I'm talking about. For the first 60 years of my life, I was calling it Jolin. And it wasn't until John said, oh, no, you flatlander, that's Halon, you know. And so anyway, so now I sound like a local. It was established in 1801. First use of the name was 1801, meaning Valley of Dead Trees. And the post office was established in 1872. Here is the Franklin School in Halon, showing the entire student body. And then we also have here the hotel there that's at Halon. And this is a Harlan photographer that's from King City. And today that's still there. Yeah, that was it's behind a fence, but it's still there. And then we're here, this is the mission just right down the street. And so if you're looking at that fabulous garden that's there and all those wonderful buildings, you can see that the only thing that really existed at the time that's original were the arches. And we have another view here. They cleaned out some of the trees, but again, you can see the garden didn't really exist there at the time that this picture was taken. And here's a more modern view after the building was restored in the 40s. And then I pulled this off the internet to kind of show it today. We were there earlier today, drinking wine, having a good time. This is the only view I've ever found of Greenfield, and it's the headwaters of the Greenfield Irrigation Canal. Whoopee. But what's more important was written on the back. Dear friends, Dorothy Annie H. arrived at 8 p.m. Friday, June 11th. Weight 6.5 pounds. Mother and child both doing fine. Love from us to you all. Yours truly, George. Just thought it was a cute little postcard that was identifying something, an important email. That was an email that was sent out at the time to everybody to say this is what happened. Bradley I never really heard of before until I found a postcard from it. Then I had to figure out more about it. Bradley is way down the south here, and so it honors Bradley V. Sargent, a state senator. And so the post office was established in 1886, but back in the 1886 San Luis Obispo Tribune, they said that Bradley was going to get Mr. Willis, the son of MC Willis, to be the postmaster. So I don't know what happened. A little bit of conflict there. There's a beautiful picture of the Bradley Bridge crossing the Salinas River. Another picture of the Bradley Bridge crossing the Salinas River. Remember, those bridges were really important. And this was the postcard I found of Bradley. I'd never seen one before. And this was an earlier photograph because you can see the postcard only used about 2/3 of the spot. So I zoomed in a little bit to see the name Bradley, and then you can see the entire town of Bradley right there. And then recently I was able to get this postcard of Bradley downtown, done by Alsa about San Luis Obispo. And again, there's a lot of wording here that I can't really see, so we have to reverse the polarity to see the names and what's going on in town. That's what Bradley looks like today. Yeah, I know, it's sad. Okay, it's sad. I know it's sad. Okay. Not everybody gets to go up and be great. So. Parkfield. Parkfield's in Monterey County. You may not think that, but it is. And so it was established, the Parkfield Post Office established in 1884, named after a park like surrounding oak trees, motivated the name. And so I have a couple postcards. This is a scene at Parkfield, Kalinga Road. This is the Parkfield grade going in Kalinga. And then this is a recent postcard I found of actual downtown Parkfield. This is the post office that was established in 1884, and it looks it. And this is what Parkfield looks like today. I could not get a good screenshot of a now photo, so that's really what it looks like. And now we're coming to King City. King City was to commemorate Charles H. King, Stockman, located 46 miles southeast of Salinas. And so this is one of the first mentions of the King City area. It was in 1887, and it talks about the a few hours ride through this section of the country brings you to a new town, glorying in the royal name of the King City. The name itself is a very suggestive one. Thousands of acres of some of the best wheat land in the state, which surrounds this town, are owned by one man. It is in fact a country worth a king of state, as well as a king by name. See how they used to talk like that? That was how they wrote. You know, all the prose is a little bit different. Here, the soil has lost its reddish hue and has become a rich dark color. The gravel has also to a great degree disappeared. The only noticeable feature of this town is the erection of a large and commodious flour mill by the Southern Pacific Milling Company. So that was it. We're beginning King City. Now I have a metal postcard showing a steam plow in King City, showing the size of this giant plow that was not pulled behind this tractor, it was winched by this tractor. And here's a different view. Here's the same tractor, there's this winch that's pulling this cable and pulling that plow through the field. It was a different way of working at that time. I never would have thought of that. Of course, Air Quality Control Board would be all over this today, but that's the way it was at the time. 1886, at the new town of King City, the present terminus of the Southern Pacific Railroad in Monterey County is having a boom and buildings of all kinds are being rapidly constructed. An agent of the Southern Pacific Railroad is engaged in securing the right of way for the new line from San Miguel southward. That work has been completed in Ventura County. So the Southern Pacific line between Salinas and Santa Barbara was a very difficult line to get through because there's a lot of really tough mountain grades to go through. In fact, it never really got connected until 1901. The new station at San Lorenzo Creek on the Soledad extension of the Southern Pacific has received the name of King City from W.H. King. So we all know that today, but it's interesting to see it in the news from 1886. Here's a picture of the train station. Harlan likes to hide his name in the telephone pole. And then just zooming in to see the sign, King City. The rail lines, see this says King City, and it used to say, it says to San Francisco, how many miles? If the line had gone through, it would say to New Orleans. But see, King City, along this way, there's no major outlet from the south when this picture was taken. 1886, Alta Californian. Oh, why was King City named Hog City? Hogtown. Well, this is an example. You think the news media is bad today? Well, we're going to take a look back in time. 1886. The first sad news from King City, the new town 20 miles south of Soledad, comes today. Dan McKinsey, a farm laborer who had been unloading lumber, was struck by a heavy falling timber. That, as he made no complaint, his accident was not considered severe. The citizens were horrified this morning to find he had died during the night on the ground where he had gone to sleep.
The sight presented upon discovering the body was most horrible. A large number of hogs were roaming around the place, and during the night they had eaten off the man's head, face, and part of his fingers. Okay, so that was, that's August of 1886. August 17th, 1886, another newspaper. Hog kills sleeping man. It is reported here that an unknown man, supposed to be a carpenter, was found in King City this morning, partially devoured by hogs, and found his head was completely eaten off. It's supposed he was drunk and went to sleep on the ground. Okay, different story, same event. Another story, okay, August 20th. At King City, a new town of 20 miles south of Soledad, Dan McKintrey, a farm laborer, was injured last Saturday by a heavy piece of timber falling on him. He lay on the ground and is supposed to have died from his injuries. The next morning, it was found that hogs had eaten off the man's head and part of his fingers. But still not good enough. We're going to go all the way out to September 1st. D.T. Kinnison, a native of Bangor, Maine, was struck and killed by a beam falling from a house last week near King City. Before he was found, his head and one of his hands were nearly eaten off by hogs. Same event, 4 different slides. So again, if you think the news media is bad today, just think this is what you're looking at. I don't know if that's the reason why it's called Hogtown, but I have a suspicion it's part of it, okay? Here's some fire maps of King City, and I'll be happy to have you look these after the show's over. Just kind of show you that these are interesting. I get these online from the Library of Congress, and they show where all the buildings were and it helps me identify the locations of buildings. And so here is the grain warehouse in King City. This is one of the first structures that was built in King City. And then here's a view of Broadway in King City, looking at the 2 competing hotels across the street from the railroad depot. And that's the same view today. A lot has changed there, I would think. Here is the Railroad Exchange Hotel, a nice place to stay at. Here is Broadway looking towards the railroad depot. And this was the first bank in King City. And there's a newspaper article that describes what was going on in terms of what it cost to build and what's going on with it. Interesting just how they were proud to have the bank the headquarters was in Monterey. This was the Masonic Lodge. I had a hard time. I never was able to find when this building was actually constructed. I was able to find a newspaper article in 1890 talking about the lodge being established and who the first officers were, and they had this fabulous banquet at the Railroad Exchange Hotel. And then in 1892, they had another installation, and the banquet was still at the Railroad Exchange Hotel. But by 1899, they had another lodge attendance or another officer's attendance, and now they were having the meal at the lodge. So somewhere between 1892 and 1899, that building was constructed. I can't tell you when. This was the original El Camino Hotel, and then the newer version, which was added onto. And this is another view of the El Camino Hotel looking at the street. Here is the view of the train depot, then the Railroad Exchange Hotel, and just the views across the street. And this is how, if you want to look here, here's a telephone pole, telephone pole, telephone pole, and here is Photoshop for 120 years ago. Gone. Okay? You can see where they were. They're painted out. Let's see if we come back here again. We'll come back here again, you'll see it. How this car was colorized and decided to take the telephone poles out, make it look prettier. This is a view looking down Broadway with the Masonic Lodge. Another view later on, looking down Broadway from the Masonic Lodge. And this is what it looks like today. A lot of big difference. Here is the general merchandise of the Ford and Sanborn. This was the original store, and then they added on a wing. This is the Anir blacksmith shop, and sitting here, I guess there's a pipe in the street somewhere I heard about. What this used to be, it's still in the pipe in the street somewhere. Southern Pacific Wreck, 9 miles north of King City, July 12, 1914. A lot of wrecks. And so here is from the San Luis Obispo Tribune, talks about the wreck and how one of the trains turned turtle, which means it flipped completely over. and a couple people were killed. And of course, then we could go down to the theater and watch views of the wreck. And so it's at the Mets Theater tonight. You get to watch the views of the wreck and see that describe the awful wreck better than a pen. The bridge of King City. Okay, there's the original bridge. And here's another view of it. Goats were considered good luck. That's why I put goats in the picture. Got the same sign, don't walk too fast. This, from what I was told, this is where the bridge used to end, and the river washed out the bank. And so you were either on the east side or west side. And so what happened was, they put in the Flying Duck. That's what that says, the Flying Duck. It's a U.S. mail at King City. And so here's an article about it. People living on the west side of the river can now come to town even though the bridge is busted. They do not have to swim, neither do they have to cross by stream by boat, but instead they're carried high and dry and safely by means of a car, as it is called, which is run by the means of a cable anchored to a tree inside and broken in the bridge. The car was built by Joe Wasson and has been christened the Flying Duck. This is once more proven that it's hard to keep down King City enterprise. They always find a way out of most difficulties. Okay, so that was February 20th. Now, 1 week later, received severe injuries. The first accident to be recorded at the bridge since the cable Flying Duck was installed occurred Monday when Joe Wasson was severely injured. It seemed he was working underneath the cable just in front of the scissor support, which is constructed of heavy timbers and acts as a means of taking up slack on the cable. Someone, in raising the cable at an anchorage on a big tree, loosened it sufficiently that the scissor support was pulled forward with lightning speed by the immense weight of the cable, and both the support and cable caught Mr. Wasson and crushed him to the ground. Yeah, but he lived. Okay, he lived. It says he didn't, but he did. And then here's an article talking about the actual building of the bridge and how it was rebuilt, and this is the crew that did it. And then here's this is not the bridge rebuilt, this is just a newer version of the bridge. It's even been done since then. And just another view of downtown King City. And then now a view of King City. And again, there's so many views. King City was a very photographed town. A lot of different views of the King City area in the 30s and 40s. Here's the world home of the King City Pink Bean Soup. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the King City Auto Camp. And nice little place. And this is not the end of the show, this is almost the end. We talked about the lettuce trail in Salinas Valley. This guy's hauling all this lettuce. Couldn't do that today, I don't think. I think salmonella would be growing like crazy in that. And so if you want to contact me, we're not done yet. If you want to contact me, there's my email. If you go to Facebook and type in the search bar, photos from Semas, and there's my mailing address. If you follow me on Facebook, like I said, I've got almost 22,000 people that follow me, and all the pictures you see tonight, I purposely did not put on Facebook because I wanted you to see them first. I'll be putting them up over the next couple weeks. And now a word from our sponsor. I wrote some books, and I brought a few to sell. If you want to buy a book on Shaver, Huntington, and Hume Lakes, see me afterwards, $22. Okay, that's the end of the commercial. All right, so we're going to close out. It is 3,000 feet to the bottom and no undertaker to meet you. Take no chances. There is a difference between bravery and just plain ordinary foolishness. This is why here's your point. Do you think anybody paid attention to that sign? Nope. There you go. We're going to do a high kick. Woohoo. Well, that's still not good enough. Let's get Winky up there. Dude, that's Winky. He's up on there and he says, "Kill me now." Yeah, that's right. Put him up there, poor guy. You think parking was bad in Yosemite? Now, look what it was then. Yes, that was right off Glacier Point. Yeah, pretty crazy. So I hope you all had a great time tonight. These guys ate at the Kingsburg Hotel. And that's all, folks. Any questions? I'm happy to
collecting these. This is part of a 20-year collecting process. And I just never put them out. Some of these I may have put out in the past, but most of them have never been on Facebook before. So I'll put them up so that other people can see it. I understand that tonight's show was recorded for Zoom. So if it works out well, I'll also put that up. So there'll be lots of people who will be seeing this on the internet over the next couple of weeks. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, just out of curiosity, where are your major sources?
Good question. I'm going to give you the smart aleck answer, and then I'll give you a real answer. Okay, the smart aleck's answer is, it's like asking a gold miner where does he find the gold nuggets. He's got to dig through tons of gravel. Okay, but to be honest with you, I would say about half of my purchasing comes from eBay, and you just have to know how to search for it. The other half of it comes from specific image conventions. I've traveled as far away as York, Pennsylvania to attend an image convention. It was massive. I ran out of money before I ran out of convention. And so I'd love to go back again. I don't know when, but it's just finding it. Yes, anyone else?
As a follow-up, then, curious, do you try to treat the photos, you don't know, to enhance them, or leave them as...
For the most part, when I post them up, I post them and the condition that I found them. Sometimes I'll clean up some major scratches, but very seldom I take the effort because I think it's important for you to see just what the photo's gone through before I found it. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment on the Semas River there, that most of us have grown up alongside of it most of our lives. We tend to not realize that before the dam came in, that river used to run bank to bank, and a lot of your photos there showed that.
That's right. And the Semas River was a very dangerous river. And, you know, like I said, when you go south of Chualar, you change the whole dynamics of what you're going to be living under. And it is, you know, I joked around, but it was a wilderness. In many instances, it still is a wilderness. There's a lot of sparsely populated areas in South County here. So I saw somebody else's hand pop up over here. Yes, sir.
Regarding the railroad accident north of King City,
Yes.
there is now a tunnel through which trains pass, and I'm wondering if that tunnel was built as a response to...
That's a good question. I know that when I was reading the newspaper articles, there's more than I found than just what I put up there. There was an S curve there that they had to slow down for, and apparently the engineer didn't. And so they found out the hard way. So yeah, I've got a lot of really nice pictures of the railroad that go through here all the way down to Santa Barbara. It's interesting, the little history. Yes, sir.
Did you ever run across the collection of George O'Hara? He was from San Luis Obispo. He had thousands of railroad-themed postcards. And I saw him as a kid, and I knew George, and I never knew whatever happened with that.
I'm going to have to talk to you afterwards to find out who this guy was. Because, you know, the thing is, it's really hard to find this material. You have to dig. And there's no index. There's no like, oh, I know there was this postcard made. You don't know it exists until you see it. And sometimes, so you have to be very schooled in the area of the history and what was going on at the time. So there's been many times where I found a postcard, I know exactly where it's at. And when I bring it up to the counter at an antique store, the owner says, do you know where this is? And I go, yes, I do. And they'll say, am I going to regret selling this to you? And I go, probably. And like one was a beautiful picture of downtown Pismo Beach in 1915. And I bought the postcard in Cayucas. And they couldn't figure it out. But anyway, this is the way it is. What else? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Why did you start collecting from our valley when you were kind of a big valley?
Well, my collecting interest is south of Stockton, north of the Grapevine. And so what happens is that I will come across imagery of this area, and the price is really good, and the image is really great. I go, I can't pass it up. And so over the years, I've accumulated the imagery. I wasn't actually going after South Monterey County.
it just ended up, I'm going, wow, I've got a bunch of images of this area here. And so when I was approached to do the show, I said, yeah, I think I could probably do something. So, any other questions? Well, thank you. I really appreciate you all being here. I hope you enjoyed the show.